Hello everyone. In this video I want to talk about organic food and non-organic food, and I've probably talked about this a little bit. I was speaking to a client of mine, someone that I do coaching for, health coaching, and we were talking a little bit today, and I was asking her about where she got her fruit and everything, because she was saying that there wasn't a lot of variety where she was. And it turned out she said she just got her fruit from these health food shops, and I asked her why she didn't go to the other larger shops, supermarkets and so on. And she said, well, they weren't organic, and that she was getting most of her fruits and vegetables were organic, or all of them were organic or something. And I was skeptical of that as to whether anyone's getting all of their fruits and vegetables organic, um, or whether organic really means what it's claimed to mean, or what people think it means. Um, but my sort of perspective from the health perspective is that organic is not the important thing to focus on. And that's something that's just really important to me, is what's the right thing to focus on? What do you focus on, rather than what what are the million things you can do to improve your health? What's the one, or what's the few things that you can do that are most important to focus on? And that's called like the 80-20 principle from economics, where they say, you know, a small percentage of the people own 80% of the wealth or the property or the buildings or the land or whatever, and the rest of the people own 20%. Well, if you're trying to find out about land ownership or whatever, you can go to all the millions of people, but you can maybe go to the few people that own all the land, and if you want to buy some land or whatever, that's the people to go to, right? Well, it's similar with everything. That with everything there is a small percentage of things that make the big difference, and a large percentage of things that may add up to quite a small difference. And focusing on organic over conventional food is one of those things, one of those many things you can do that make very little difference to your overall health. If we take health as the basic definition as being the absence of disease or illness, we've not yet at least confirmed that there is any disease, particularly that's connected with the consumption of conventional food instead of organic food. And we've also not found that eating organic food has reduced or reversed any diseases or conditions for anyone. As far as I've seen, we don't have any information suggesting that. We don't have information suggesting that people that focus more on organic foods have a better level of health in general. So when it comes to your diet, is it the important thing to focus on? If you've got a number of things you're trying to focus on and change and make a and get an impact, is changing to organic getting that impact? To me, it's more of a token change that people are making to kind of pretend that they're getting healthier. That if you go and eat organic eggs and organic milk and organic bread, that this is a better choice. And it might be a slightly better choice. It might be no difference. And for me, you're better off eating healthy conventional foods than unhealthy organic foods, of course. The fact that something's organic is not going to protect you from the other disease-causing effects of those foods. So that is my first point that I wanted to make. But the second point is organic actually better in any way? Is it better? Is it what you think it is? Is there any reason for us to think it's better? Or is it purely what, in my perspective, is mostly a way to add a premium price to fruits and vegetables? And that's what I think a lot of it is. And it's a way for governments and different organisations to make some money out of something that people want to believe is true, but isn't really. It's kind of like the coronavirus or whatever. Like, a lot of people bought into it and think it's a really terrible thing. And, you know, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be happy to get vaccines and all that stuff. But is it really as bad as we thought? Is it really as bad? Anyway, so the principal thing, the idea that most people have around organic is that organic food means food that has not been sprayed, has not been touched by artificial, man-made fertilizers and things, that's been grown in a very natural way, that you know, no pesticides, no sprays and things like that. That is the perception that people have of what organic food is, how it's grown, and all of this. Well, the first thing to point out is that organic does not mean that the food has not been sprayed. It does not mean that the food has not been sprayed with chemicals. It does not mean that the food hasn't been sprayed with man-made chemicals. It doesn't mean any of those things. What it means is that there is a certain criteria or limitation to what the farmers can use in order to get organic certification. Organic is not a certification of the food being better quality. It's not a certification of the food tasting better. It's not a certification of the food having more nutrients. It's not a certification of the food having been grown in a more environmentally friendly way. It's nothing other than a certification of the pesticides and things used are organic, which means that they fit into a certain criteria of what organic means. It doesn't mean there's no pesticides being used. Now, in the growing of fruits and vegetables in the way that we do it, which is an unnatural way, quite clearly it's an unnatural way. We don't get monocrops of fruit trees in nature. We don't get that. And a lot of the varieties of fruit that we have might not proliferate in nature if they were just left to themselves. They might just be eaten up by pests, you know, so they might not really proliferate in nature. So it's an unnatural setting. All of our food's unnatural. All of it. Fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, everything, animal products, it's all unnatural. It's all hybridized. Everything's hybridized anyway, but it's all, we've created it all. There's no cows in nature. You know, there's animals similar to that, but there ain't cows in nature. There's not a lot of nature left. There's not a lot of like the natural world untouched by humans left. So there's that point. So the way that we grow the fruit means that we basically need to spray it in some way or protect it in some way. Now this is where a lot of people will say, well, permaculture says this and permaculture says that, and we can do these things and we can use them. Not for feeding the millions of people. You can make your own permaculture situation for yourself. But for you to compete against the farmer that isn't limited to permaculture ideology, you're never gonna win. Especially for huge volumes of food. And a principle in nature is quite clearly, if there's any food, animals are going to try and eat it, and pests are going to try and eat it. It's very competitive. So you have to protect it in some way. Now, the great thing about fruit is that fruit is itself protected from a lot of pests just by the fact that it has a skin and everything else. So how much do these fruits really need to be sprayed? A lot of them. I don't know. Are they really sprayed as much as people think? Potentially not. But fruits and vegetables themselves create pesticides. And let me say that again. Fruits and vegetables create pesticides. And there was an organic, and actually there are people that, and this is weird, but there are people who, I actually had a friend who was recommended not to eat organic fruits and vegetables. When I heard that, I thought that's madness. But I learned that actually there are organic versions of fruits and vegetables, that are grown because they have a higher level of natural pesticide. So there was actually celery that was sold at one point that was very high in natural pesticide, so it didn't get consumed, so it didn't need to be sprayed as much, so it was organic. The only problem was it was so high in natural pesticide that people were getting rashes and things from consuming it, so it had to be taken off the market. But that was an attempt to create a food that wasn't getting, ravaged by pests, but it wasn't getting ravaged by pests because it was so high in this natural pesticide that the plant itself created. So fruits and vegetables create pesticides, and what we've done is we've taken that principle and applied it to farming and modern methods, and we've tested it and we've made sure it's basically safe, and it allows us to grow food, and it allows us to stop our food from being eaten by pests. And it'd be very difficult to do otherwise. If you have a field full of fruit trees, it's very difficult to grow that without pest, without disease spreading, without all that stuff. Now, that being the case, organic farms have to spray as well. So let's get that clear. Organic farms have to spray as much, potentially more, because they're limited to what they can use. So they are spraying with toxic pesticides. Yes, just accept that. Just accept it. That is how it has to be. Of course, if you're growing stuff in your garden, different story. Now at this point you'll say, well, I shouldn't eat any fruit then if it's all sprayed. Well, you ought to remember fruits and vegetables have the least pesticide residue of any food, for a start. And the science shows very clearly the benefit of consuming fruits and vegetables far, far, far outweighs the tiny risk, the basically minuscule risk that there is any danger from the pesticide. The whole pesticide thing in this thing is a conspiracy theory that's been built up to sell products, to create this organic movement, to manipulate people, to make people spend more on organic foods, which they've really heightened the price of foods when they put organic on it, especially in the US. And in the US, people are way more scared of this thing. I mean, the US are like ahead of the world in a lot of ways and sophisticated, but I've found so many people from the US that are freak out about organic. We had worked with some people, they make it a big issue. I'm like, it's not an issue, stop. Like, it's an issue for you, but it's not such an issue for other people around the world. But they make it into a big deal. It ain't a big deal. It's such a small deal that it's not even funny. And people put all this time and effort and wasted energy into it. It's silly. It's not going to improve your health. Changing your diet to organic. It might not even be that much better for the environment. It's not vegan organic. In fact, it's less likely to be vegan because they're using manure and stuff like that from the animal industry. So organic foods actually support non-vegan practices and put money towards the animal industry. It's not good for the environment. It's actually not better for the environment because they still are spraying, and they actually end up spraying more often because it's not as effective, because the conventional industry has created man-made pesticides that that can be used in very small amounts because they're very effective, and they don't have to be sprayed as much, and therefore they do less damage. So, but this will not stop people having these false ideas, because once again it's been marketed to them, it's been explained to them, the story's been built up. People have this fear of man-made things and this trust of nature, and we think organic means nature, and it doesn't. It's just another classification, another type of pesticides being used, a different farming practice that might fall in line with some of your philosophical dogmatic ideas. But is it any relationship to better health of you, of animals, of the planet, of the pests? Well, obviously the pests are going to be killed by the pesticides. That's kind of the point. No, not really, and it's certainly not better quality food, and it's certainly not better tasting food. And what I find is that people invent all these weird ideas around fruit. There's so much fear, and this is the problem. So much fear has been put into people around fruit, and they stop eating it because they think it's all full of pesticides and chemicals. And they'll say stuff like, "Oh, I had some apples and I sat them out, and they didn't go off, and they sat out for weeks and weeks and weeks." And I'm like, "What are you talking about? Apples go off." Almost all my diet's conventional food. Almost 100%. Like I don't bother with the whole organic thing. I would buy organic if it looked better, if it looked like it tasted better. But I generally don't just go for organic. For the label, for the kudos or something, for the virtue signaling or whatever you want to call it aspect of it. Organic is not as important to me as the quality of the fruits and the vegetables that I'm eating and the flavour of them. And a lot of people say organic always tastes better. It's not true. And they say, yeah, it does. No, I've eaten more fruits and vegetables than most of you. It doesn't. And then they'll say, oh, but conventional foods don't go off. Yeah, they do. Predictably, reliably, of course they go off. Oh, but conventional foods don't have as much nutrition. Yeah, they do. And on, they make things up based on this weird fear conspiracy story that's been built into their mind. And the way that you can get back down to earth is go and speak to farmers, speak to people in the food industry, the fruit industry. They're like, this is all a con. There's no way you can produce fruit in those quantities that doesn't get consumed by pests without doing something. For a lot of it. But I think we have a misguided notion as well as how much people are spraying. Like, this is a very regulated industry. Otherwise, we'd have people all the time collapsing from eating fruit. It doesn't happen. It's very regulated. It's very minimised. And a lot of the spraying... the thing that really changed my mind about this, made me start to look in other directions, was an orchard grower, a guy that had a small orchard in England, and he used to make YouTube videos, and he would talk about his orchard, and he was a doctor, and he was quite an interesting guy. And he was doing a video where he was going around spraying his trees, and he said, this is something we learned that we had to do. We tried everything else. We tried the organic, the permaculture ideas, we tried all this, but we just realised that they were losing their fruit to like wasps and different pests. And so they started putting up some traps to capture wasps, and they started to spray on the leaves or the flower or whatever. And that's a misperception that people have. They think that the actual fruit is being sprayed on, and then that fruit's just going into the shop. It might not even be the fruit. It might be the flower before the fruit's actually grown. It might just be the flower that gets sprayed. It might be the leaves that get sprayed. Once again, there's regulations. You can't just spray on a fruit and then take it to a shop. You can't do that. There's regulations as to how long they have to wait before they're transporting this fruit to the shop. So most people are not very educated on all this. They've bought into the conspiracy. They've bought into the whole idea that farmers don't know what they're doing. They've bought into this idea that the soil's degenerated and degraded and all nonsense. Total nonsense. Total con, fear, conspiracy nonsense. And it also stops people from eating more fruit. This is one of the blockages people have with eating fruit. Is they're like, this has been sprayed, this is bad, this has got this and that. And you're like, you don't seem to care about it when you have your Indian curry. You're not asking anyone if that's organic. You're not asking if the Coca-Cola is organic, your McDonald's meal is organic. No one's asking that. But when it comes to fruit, they have this blockage. So we need to get this nonsense out. Organic is an idea that appeals to people, but it's nonsense. quite frankly, it's total nonsense. If it makes you feel better, and you think that it's you want to support farmers that are trying to do better or whatever, then that's fair enough. But we need to develop some gratitude for having any food and having the quantities we have and being able to live the lives that we can. And when it comes to health, we need to focus on eating more fruit, more vegetables, and not focus on, is it organic, and is it hybridized, and is it GMO, and is it all that. None of that's really all that important. It's only important in the world of YouTube conspiracy documentaries, which are almost always created by the supplement industry. They're almost always connected with the supplement alternative health industry. Always. I guarantee you that. If you dive into it deeply enough. Almost always. Anyway, thank you for watching today, and what I hope is that you develop a really positive relationship towards fruits and vegetables, and you don't think, oh, they're all sprayed and bad and I can't eat them and I need to cut down what I eat or fill myself with pesticides and all that. If organic tastes better to you and looks better, and if you know that, if you've genuinely looked into it and you think that the way that it's grown or sourced or the particular farms are better, you want to support them, that's all great. Is it the thing to focus on when it comes to your health? No, it's not the priority to focus on. But anyway, thank you for watching. Feel free to subscribe, share, leave a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, and thank you for joining me once again on the journey towards perfect health.